you sure you want to do this? And suddenly, even though you were really sure, you're like, I don't know. That's really intense.
Why do they ask?
I
Just
totally
do it.
I mean, it's clearly a good thing they ask. I'm sure many a person has lost their job before that button came along.
Even with the bottom, are you
I'm
sure?
like,
They
okay.
click yes, and still they
Yeah,
lose
yeah,
their
yeah.
job.
Like, you're not going to go back at that stage. You're like, no, it's definitely fine.
It's like the Gmail undo feature. I mean, that is just beautiful.
That one is actually game changing.
And Instagram lets you unsend, but WhatsApp makes you tell everyone you deleted it. It's like, guys, just give me some dignity here. It was 4 a.m. Anyway, okay, insight into Vinay's personal life. Okay, let's go. Startup Support, episode 4 or 5, I think. It's amazing. This is actually becoming a real thing, which is super exciting. Neeraj is already on his second tour, and hey, Julius was also a little late. But anyway, because we're live now, you're not technically late because we're live late. Anyway, okay, I'll stop rambling. We are hanging out with Shalom, who's going to introduce himself and the business that he's running, and then we're going to dive into the challenge he's brought forward. He's super lucky to have Neeraj in the house, who is an ex-founder of Sprig, which is a super successful food-based business out in the West Coast. And we have Ruperto, who is from Startup Bootcamp, and we have Freddie, who is from Patch. All of these awesome people are part of the Backed Venture community, which is run by, top left, Madam D herself. Okay, let's roll. So Shalom, just kick us off by telling us a little about the business you're running, kind of help the team here get an overview of what you do, what the business is about, and then let's roll right into your challenge, and we'll spend up to 30 minutes problem solving on that, and then we'll see what happens next. It's a bit of an adventure, but
Amazing.
Let's start there.
Amazing. First of all, guys, apologies for my surroundings. This day was not planned very well, so I do apologize about that. First off, my name is Shalom Osiari. I am a data analyst by day and an entrepreneur by life. I'm currently in the UK filming and fundraising for Esca Menu. Esca Menu essentially is a peer-to-peer food marketplace that aims to connect home cooks, local chefs, and bakers to their local communities and beyond. Our mission is to lower the barriers to entry for food entrepreneurship while providing foodies with restaurant quality food at lower than restaurant prices. So far, we have 54 chefs signed up on our platform, are generating about 250 euros WRR, and are in a very good place to scale. However, we are noticing one or two issues with scale in terms of the regulatory side of things, inspections, governmental sort of approvals to make sure that chefs are approved to sell meals on our platform. And that is the problem that I'm here with you today. I'm struggling to see how we can do this effectively. The one solution that I've come up with is to possibly bring said inspections in-house and also possibly make them virtual. However, the HSE, who we have unofficially partnered with, the Health Service Executive in Ireland, who run the Environmental Health Office, have kind of told us that we're not allowed to do that and that we need to essentially ensure that they are aware of all of the food businesses that come on our platform. Now, this isn't a problem. The only issue is the government, as you probably know, have very, very slow turnaround times, and processes that should take, a day, maybe 2 days, are taking weeks. And that's the issue that we're finding now with scale, bringing people on the platform and actually allowing them to go live and start selling their meals. Obviously, that's where we're possibly losing some revenue and our growth is stunted. So that's the challenge I have at the moment. To give you some fundraising information, we have not raised any funds. We have been fully bootstrapped so far. So all revenue that we have generated so far has also been fully organic. We have not done any outbound marketing. And our first marketing campaign is actually due to start in about 3 to 4 weeks. But due to the work I'm currently doing here in the UK, that has been delayed because we do have some things in the pipeline with a number of big sort of platforms that I can't really talk about just yet. So that's me. That's who Esca is. And yes, please, I would love your questions and comments.
Awesome. Every still said it. This is like when you only remember somebody as a kid, and then you're like, why are you wearing grown-up clothes? Why are you talking like that? But
Hang on.
really
For
awesome.
context, Daisy and Shalom know each other. That's why. Anyone who's tuning in is like, is that the first thing she's going to say?
We really grew up together. This is awesome. You pulled off quite a lot, and it sounds like in a very short amount of time. I feel like Niraj should just fix this for you because I don't know about food regulation. I have some ideas for how you can sort of weave in the onboarding process to still work, even if there is no way around shortening the time, and ways in which you can make that work for both your chef side and also for customers on the platform. But we should probably first see if there's actually a way to fix that or improve that in some way first.
Yeah. Did we lose Shalom?
We did.
Yes.
Shalom.
Whoops.
Well,
I think we should keep answering anyway, and then he can watch the recording.
No, but I wanted to say before, like, I think his kind of elevator pitch was really on point. Really,
Yes,
3 minutes, 2 minutes, all the information that we needed. So
Yeah,
I was just saying that your pitch was really good, Shalom. 3 minutes, going to the point, great.
Yeah, I can give a little bit of insight into how we dealt with kind of similar situations, Shalom. And so first of all, I totally agree. I thought it was a great pitch. Love the business vision. I think there's like a lot of like macro indications that there is people want, like there's a huge gap in the market, and restaurants are not servicing all of the needs that people have. And so I think like people do crave home cooked food, and I'm a big believer in that. What I've found is that when you're doing kind of like these disruptive businesses that have real world aspects, like the main challenge that you face is that regulations are not set up to identify, even to understand what your business is. And so you don't fit into restaurant businesses. You don't fit into like a lot of other buckets. And because of that, governments are super conservative, and they just won't, their basic instinct is to say no to whatever you can do. And so there's the like macro way, or the high level way that you deal with this is you need to tell a story and paint a picture for the government for why this is good for society, why this is good for their constituents, and why this is, why you're basically doing good. And the way you do that is by getting a shit ton of customers on your side who care about this and who will basically vouch for you. The problem that you're facing right now is that everyone's going to be really slow, and you can't operate. And really, there's kind of there's like 3 sets of currency that you have to make things move, So one is time. Either you can just go through the route and take however long you want. Obviously, that's not great for an early stage company. 2 is money. And a lot of stuff like this gets fixed when you play the legal game. And, like early on at Sprig, we like hired people who are well connected in the government, basically lobbyists, to come and just like fix things for us. Lobbyists are not great for long-term, solutions, but they can be good for short-term. And so you might have to do something like that and pay someone who is super well connected, who can at least start expediting things. And then, 3 is goodwill. So like getting customers who kind of buy into it. So if you don't have time or money, then you or the goodwill yet, then you kind of have to play by the rules probably and figure out shortcuts. But I don't know. I would like really strongly advise like potentially doing some aggressive stuff using ideally capital and goodwill. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. Thank you so much for that. And probably just to add into that, one of the sort of workarounds that we came up to, help the government help us has been to, as I said, do virtual tours of people's kitchens. So as soon as the chef signs up, we're able to actually get a video inspection of their surroundings and then send that to the government. They've also allowed us to essentially allow our chefs to start trading before the inspection is conducted. However, on a number of occasions, after said chef has already started trading, the government will say that, oh, this chef's kitchen is actually not up to code. They need to stop trading immediately. That then puts us in a bad light to the chef, stops the chef's revenue, and essentially, kind of just spreads a bad sort of a message to the community that we are not essentially fully organized, even though we are. But word of mouth spreads like wildfire, and there's very little that we can do about that. So those are some of the workarounds that we've come up with outside of utilizing capital to maybe lobby some politicians.
Maybe there's
Yeah,
an
I mean-
opportunity to co-create there. Like, if there's already willingness to engage with the fact that they're like, okay, we'll receive a video, then that's already probably more like wiggle room than quite a lot of people, quite a lot of startups experience when they're first trying to push for regulation. So in that case, especially if there's someone within the like body that you're dealing with who like is invested, or you could get invested, you could build that sort of relationship with and say, what would it look like for us to build, like if money's no issues and whatever, what would it look like to build a really strong remote check-in, like checklist process? Is there a particular way they have to film? Is there a particular like extent the camera has to be? Maybe you just hire someone whose job it is that they go there and they do the video footage, and there's specific things they look at. And so, because if you've co-created with them, then it means that instead of there being like this huge margin of error for what either the way somebody films something or the stuff they do or don't pick up, it's like much narrower. So that could be an opportunity to, from there, you have your own sort of almost custom-made process that works for your chefs, but also works for the government body that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So Shalom, can I just jump in with a couple of observations?
Please, yes, thank you.
Hi, I'm Freddie. I actually don't have a background in food. I'm not an investor either, although I am part of the Backed network. But I am also a founder and an operator, and I have been in kind of sort of retail, sort of hard environments as well as kind of tech environments. And I guess from what I understood, you're pretty early stage, right? So I don't think you've got like loads of capital to throw around necessarily right now. Is that right?
They're fundraising.
That is correct, Freddie.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let me offer three things, and you can do them what you want. The first is like probably the most like practical, which is trying to find a way of, as you I think very well like eloquently put, like the regulator doesn't understand, and they don't understand because they don't speak the same language, right? And so you know the language of startups, the language of innovation, right? So can you try and pretend or borrow the language of something that they do understand? Can you just like become a restaurant? Can you become like a food delivery service? I mean, I really have no idea what these categories are. Can you find a hotel and like borrow their kitchen? Or I mean, I don't know if that's going to work. You know, can you ship people's food into a kitchen that, you know, because hotels don't use their kitchen very much.
Freddie, one of the, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, apologies.
Sure.
It's funny you mentioned this because this is something that I've actually been investigating heavily, is to subcontract commercial kitchens and get our chefs to cook from those kitchens, which are have already passed the inspections, they're insured and have all the regulatory stuff done. And then we would essentially be the medium by which we, you know, the chefs sell their meals. So it's no longer, you know, the problem with it is that our concept it changes from a home cook to basically a dark kitchen, you know, and that then changes our market and also changes the target,
so
you know. Yeah.
I so totally agree. I guess what I'm suggesting is to think about this like tactically to achieve the long goal. And so can you sort of like tack your way to get to where you need to in the future? And I understand that it might change your model in the short term, but maybe that's just what you need to do in the sort of 3, 6, 12 month time frame to build that reputation and build that trust with the regulator or the regulatory environment.
That coincides nicely with trying to co-create with the regulator, because that's not going to happen overnight. So if you are trying to figure out the perfect methodology by which, you know, people can virtually get their own kitchens combined and say that's going to take 5 or 6 months to design, then meanwhile there's something you said for giving space. It doesn't have to change your marketing in the immediacy, because if I think home cook, I'm thinking about the fact that somebody who isn't a professional chef and it's not a restaurant is cooking. If they happen to be doing that at some industrial kitchen in the same way as they happen to be cooking at a friend's house, that doesn't, I think, to me as an end user, change it too much. If that long-term became the proposal, then maybe it does. But if it's a short-term situation, then I don't know that it changes your narrative too much, or that you have to.
I think the positioning still works, even if it's moved in that way.
Yeah.
So I would say
it's definitely
that's really
something that we can. It's definitely something that we're going to look into a lot more. As I said, we actually already have a contract with a commercial kitchen in Dublin. The problem is it's just not central enough for a lot of our chefs. So we're trying to find other solutions. The other issue is costs will increase for the chefs because we are paying for these kitchens. And so that'll add another barrier to entry for users coming onto the platform. So those are some of the obstacles that we're currently dealing with this new proposal, but it's
Is there a
definitely
way for you
currently
to-
the best solution that we have.
Is there a way for you to pitch it as an optional value proposition? And so even if you don't have the full system designed, you do at least have some collateral that's like, here's how you get your kitchen, validated so they can start that process. And then say in the interim, either you can do some marketing, et cetera, but you can't start to sell, or you can start to sell, but then you take, our space at X or Y cost. And then it's a short-term perk actually rather than an obstacle, because you're essentially saying that they can get started much earlier, much sooner and hit the ground running. And then it lets you cover those costs. It also, again, clarifies it's not permanent. And it also leaves the door open that maybe you just keep that in the future. There'll always be situations where someone's kitchen is not enough, maybe they have overflow, whatever. And if you have this facility to sort of short-term book I don't know what you call it. What's the cubicle version of a kitchen? Whatever.
I kind of have a devil's advocate take here. It's just oftentimes, okay, so I think the most important thing here and what regulators care about is that the food that you're serving is going to be safe. And for you guys too, number one, I think is to understand that all they care about is that people are going to be healthy and safe. And you guys need to create your own standards so you feel comfortable here too. And that's probably the most existential risk of your business, is that somebody gets sick, your brand goes to shit, and maybe something even worse happens and the business is done, right? So you need to do everything in your power to make sure that you solve that really core thing, because that is the fundamental bet that you're making, is that you can do this at scale in an in an unsupervised way and maintain safety. But on the flip side, the aspect that I kind of disagree with is that this is a pretty monumental disruption and step function change of the food system in the country. And that doesn't happen incrementally. It usually doesn't. Uber did not start as using taxi cabs, and they never would have gotten to the point where you were now driving in some random person's car if that was the path that they took. And so oftentimes, if you're making that really, really significant regulatory change, it often happens when you ask for forgiveness rather than permission. But I will say that food is a tricky place to do that, because if you get someone sick, that's a really bad place to be. And so you kind of have to balance those two things. And I've seen a lot of people try to start this business and they hit the roadblock of regulatory doesn't approve of it. Let's go to commercial kitchens. And that's just a fundamentally different business. And you're right, then you're a ghost kitchen. And I don't think it's very easy to bridge the gap between being a ghost kitchen and being this company. I don't think actually I don't even think it's possible, because then everything you build is optimized towards being a ghost kitchen. And I don't think you'll ever get there, to be honest.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. I completely agree.
What about the idea of bringing someone in-house who, so apart from this co-creation bit, et cetera, again, for what's the safest version of ask for forgiveness rather than permission? Because the thing you want to be asking forgiveness for is I breached the letter of the law rather than the spirit of the law, one. And so in that case, if there is, because there's definitely what are the things that are looked for and how do those things get validated? If you can find someone who has worked, does work, whatever, maybe bring them on as an advisor, give them a little bit of equity, and what they do with you is to design out that process, and you just hit the ground running with that. You're sending that stuff to see if they're coming back through and saying now it's approved, then, and you've already been selling, but it met the standards and you're absolutely sure that it did because it was well designed, then so be it. If eventually they're oh, hang on, you started having people sell while the regulation was coming, then there's an easier discussion to be had in terms of just how deep did you go on what you built out, just how close to what they would have done does that work?
And your standards need to be better. They need to be higher than their standards.
Yeah.
You need to prove that your model is significant, the food is safer, that it's better, that everything is twice as good and twice as safe as the existing model. And then you can kind of get away with stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll just be very quick. In the idea of borrowing kitchens, I think that's the title question. It's where can I borrow kitchens from? Maybe people who did get approved would be willing to share their kitchen with other people in their community who can also then cook out of that kitchen. That might be one way of doing it, right? So they actually monetize their own kitchen, Because the problem with this dark kitchen is that it's has a location, but maybe in the same building you have multiple cooks, right? That might be one solution. It's like,
The only problem with that, Vinay, is that these guys are just like restaurants, except smaller. So the competition is extremely high. In fact, we found it very difficult to build collaboration between them because they are their own individual businesses. And
Good
a
point.
lot of them sell similar meals. So I don't want to share my kitchen with competitor A,
Sure.
because
Yeah,
what if they
that
see
makes
my
sense.
secret sauce? So
Yes.
that is something that we have tried to tackle, and it's just unfortunately not worked. But so far, I think the best solution is to do the inspections ourselves, get the reviews done ourselves, and then when the regulatory or the government comes in and actually does the inspection, we can just say, "Oh yeah, cool, fantastic." But we've technically already cleared said
Yeah.
cook. So I think that might be the best thing, is to just hunker
Yeah,
down and actually
there
do
are
it
so
ourselves.
many people who know HACCP stuff, like help. Like
Yeah.
I got taught this in home ec, so I think it's like about the diligence of carry out more so than
Yeah.
there's like a huge technical barrier.
And given the
I
state
mean,
of
if
the
you want a
industry right
side
now,
hustle,
there's
Daisy,
a lot of people.
If I take on one more side hustle, I will physically implode. So no, thank you. It's
The other
very
thing that might help you in terms of winning favor is this is a people's champion story at the end of the day. There's a PR story here, and I think you should begin to generate PR to win the people on your side, because governments also need to please people. And it feels like there's a lot of the individual stories. Well, this business is launched and the time it's launching and what it's trying to do and the chefs it's creating work for in an industry that's been totally hemorrhaged by the last 24 months of pandemic. If you can start generating positive stories and a sequence of positive stories, get momentum that way, it will make regulators more favorable to you, because no one wants to go against a people's champion,
yeah.
And
Absolutely,
so,
absolutely. And that'll
Yeah.
definitely happen. It's just going to take a little bit of time, but I'm certain that it's going to happen. In fact, part of the UK is to generate that story, if you would like.
Can I just maybe offer a perspective here? I guess Shalom, it's your time. If I were to try and kind of tie up a little bit of the discussion just there, I guess I would say that I guess trying to maybe I'm going to try this metaphor, see if it works. This language metaphor, right? Like if they speak regulatory language and you speak startup language, you kind of need to learn regulatory language and show them something in their language in order to then be able to teach them your language, right? And I think you have to make that first move. And I think we've gone down quite a useful sort of problem solving session live here around dark kitchen, does it work, does it not work? There are probably other versions of that conversation, right, which are in regulated language, right? So is it a catering facility, is it a dark kitchen, is there some live inspector version? I mean, are there other parallels in their world to be discussed, right? But I think that is a sort of high level sort of way of thinking. I think is probably maybe a way of summarizing that conversation, which will then have many other threads. I think the other thing that just came up there, which I completely agree with, and was something I wanted to highlight as well, was really deciding what your core competencies are and hiring around those. And that really means picking maybe 2 or 3 things that you're really, really, really good at, and trying not to be really, really, really good at everything. And so if you're going to decide, as I think some of the advice has been on this call, to be really good at sort of health and safety standards, that can become a competitive advantage. It doesn't have to be a cost center, right? You can't be really, really, really good at everything. You can't be really good at quality, speed, price, scaling, marketing, and so on. And so I think nested within this broader conversation around whether you're using nested within this broader conversation of regulatory kind of alignment, I think you just have to decide if you're going to meet the bar or if you're going to actually be the person that sets the standard. And then the third thing that I would say is just generally that and that's why I asked about you being early stage. A lot of the time, these things can seem super intractable, super impossible. I don't have the money. Everyone's throwing these great ideas at me, but that's easy for them to say because they've already built the thing or whatever. But all I would say to you, founder to founder, is you will get through it. You will find an answer, and you're not going to find the answer in this call or indeed in any one conversation with any one advisor. What you will find is actually in yourself the resilience to like keep asking those questions. So like maximize on curiosity, maximize on ways of thinking rather than trying to find the answer, because nobody has the answer. They can only help you think about framing the problem. And you will get through it. And you just have to keep believing that. You have to keep running at that, even when all hope seems lost. Because actually, once you get good at that, that means that you can really become exceptional at constantly getting through those hurdles, because they will keep getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
I did promise Shalom that Neeraj had the answer, though, so I feel like I've let him down.
No, absolutely not. No,
I really like that. The
Yeah.
final thing that
Yeah.
I will say though, like at this point, obviously, because it seems like it's mostly you solo founding this currently, and there's, I think solo founders work as well, to be honest, depending on the challenge that's ahead of them, the challenge that's set in front of them. I think in this particular case, given that there's good reason to think that one, on the regulatory side, you need someone, and two, on the marketing side, you need someone, in terms of just like, if nobody's responsible for making sure it happens, it always is almost happening, or is around the corner, because you know that the story's there and you know that you can do the channels if you have to, but knowing that you can and actually it happening is often, the difference that is often just like, is it someone's specific responsibility? And if you are building out a team, fundraising, running around, shaping the vision, making those decisions, it will be very easy to keep deprioritizing something as simple as like, let me do some press outreach today. Whereas if it's someone's role, and then the question then becomes, what would it take to pull in someone to be responsible for that? And if you're not in a position where you can yet hire and pay that out, is there a way for it to be advisor? Is that enough? If it's not enough, is there a way for them to come on as a co-founder? But I think it's worth thinking about what has to happen in order both for you to cover your ass, but also for you to scale and hit metrics that you can raise. And if those are things that and if you really sit down and see, you will consistently deprioritize in the face of other really pressing things, then you need to bring somebody in to do that.
Absolutely. As far as me being a solo founder, I do have a CTO. Unfortunately, he is not great on the operational side of things, and he kind of just wants to, stick behind the computer. And I'm kind of okay with that for now. But I am working on getting in a COO that can help with these sort of things. And in fact, I'm close to signing somebody. So hopefully, these sort of things will help push us forward a little bit more, and to find exactly, for me to focus on the things I'm good at, and plug the holes that currently exist.
Nice. Okay. Well, let me know if I can help on the CEO front. I do a good hype man role for people trying to hire above their pay grade if that's needed.
Amazing. I always do.
I wanted to add like 2 cents because I was listening to what all of you said, and I was learning a lot. I was even taking notes. So thank you guys. But I really like some points that Freddie made. And the last point that he said, take this opportunity, 2 things, as any other problem as a founder, and follow your agile methodology, lean startup methodology, right? So act fast, fail fast. So experiment fast, try different things, but do it fast. So you can, this didn't work, next one, didn't work, next one, So follow your like entrepreneurial spirit that you use to build this startup, just to tackle this problem. And the final thing that also came, what Freddie said, take this opportunity maybe to be your competitive advantage. So now maybe you will be from your competitors, the one that has the best regulatory, compliance, So that will be your stamp. You can create a stamp. It has like the ESCA menu stamp of regulatory. And then you will stand out from the others from this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Roberto. I love the jumper, by the way.
I know. The jumper is stealing the show, man. It's all I can look at this whole call.
I came only for this.
Thank you for the compliments. Shal, is there anything else that's pressing? Because I think this is a good note to end on that particular question, because a lot of it is just ruminating and making a call, and then not getting lost in the continued discussion. So is there something else that we can do in the remaining time?
I would like to ask something to Shalom. Can I ask you something, man? Because
please, yeah, go ahead.
Actually, I love your proposition, and I was looking your offline, your website, your social media, which I like. But I noticed that you don't have many videos like in Instagram, or you are not. I didn't see in TikTok. And since this business is like the food business, look, my girlfriend, she is the whole day looking at videos of people cooking. So I think you should leverage that more. You know, like maybe
Definitely.
co-create content with your cooks, with your chef, and then you're gonna go viral, and that will also increase your growth. This is
Absolutely. Yeah. In
besides
fact, we
the
just hired a
regulatory
marketer.
aspect, but yeah.
Yeah. No, great
Are
point.
you trying to hire
We
this man
actually
right
just
here
hired a
for your
marketer.
marketing function?
Hire this one.
No, don't hire anyone. You're busy. Oh, I don't know if it's lagging or if it's that it cut out, but I think you're gonna throw in another question.
Yeah, I cannot hear him.
I think he's trying to figure that out. I see a lot of finger movement.
Oh,
Can we ask maybe Niraj some of your like, are there any like direct experiences that relate to the like super early days that sound a bit like this? I know Sean's not on the call, but I guess he might see the recording.
Yeah. What's interesting is that when I first started Sprig, the first idea was to build this actually. And back then, the first idea was, to take the untapped supply of really great chefs and create something that was more home cooked style. The reason we didn't do it is twofold. One was the regulatory challenge back then was significantly more complex than I think it is today. I think regulatory bodies, at least in the US, are much more willing to innovate here. And then two was that consistency of quality was just really hard. And we thought like not having control would mean that we wouldn't feel as comfortable on the health and safety side and the quality side. A lot of things have started to shift over the last like 7 years, and now this model is working really well. So I think like this is inevitable to some extent. I think it's going to happen, and it just needs someone to lead it.
Unfortunately, I'm having some technical
difficulties. We can hear you though.
But maybe just to wrap up, Roberto, I really appreciate your comments, and I'm sorry about the technical difficulties, but
specifically just you. The rest of us can go jump.
Again, I definitely hope I can keep in touch with some of you guys. Your suggestions have been awesome, and if you can hear me, I can't hear you. Just FYI. Awesome. We can hear you. Thank you. Awesome. So thank you all so much. I'm definitely going to take a lot of your suggestions on board. I'm currently actually going to start putting together our in-house regulatory team to start doing it in-house inspections. Yes. I will leave my email address in the chat. Just, if you guys can please contact me with your email addresses, I'd definitely love to set up some further calls with you all. I still cannot hear you, just in case you think I can. I'm just gonna write this out here.
Okay.
All right, we're going to give you lots of visual aids to say that
Exactly.
Thank you all so much for your time. Yeah, I don't want to waste any more of this.
All good. Okay. Cool. That was a lot of fun.
Appreciate it.
That's good. I feel like we were actually helpful that time. This feels like the most helpful we've maybe been.
This is being recorded live.
Pat ourselves on the back to run, but I don't know. I'm like, that feels like tangible, concrete.
What's cool is this time we actually having Niraj and having Shalom there was like a great thing. We need to start matching up founders with domain experts, at least one or two, because I think people like Freddie and Roberto have really good adjacent perspectives, but I think a founder always gets excited when you're like, oh my god, you built a business in the space that's successful. How did you do it? Help me and guide me. One other thing,
I thought it was a good mix.
Yeah.
No, I was learning a lot from you guys. I swear. Thank you.
We're actually going to talk. Hang on, we're not going anywhere yet. I still have 20 minutes of your time, guys. You signed up for the full hour.
All right, let's hear it.
So one quick thing for Shalom, when you watch this again, look at Plum Guides, because Plum Guides had a way of doing household inspections for people to rent their homes out, and they got a really, really pretty slick operation and actually managed to make people very excited about becoming a plum, like a house checker, and it felt like a real thing of pride. So it might be a model to replicate when you're working out your onboarding or your rollout for these kitchen quality control people.
That's a really good one. You should send it to him afterwards in case he doesn't hear it.
Okay, cool. we're now going to talk. We're doing a switcheroo, and Freddie is also a founder. I know, plot twist. This is what a show, right? What a show. Keep the people guessing. Freddie's also a founder. He's the founder of a business called Patch, which launched last year. He's going to talk to us about what Patch does, where it's at already, and then we're going to talk about a couple of areas that he's been reflecting on, and see if we can have some fun getting him unstuck or just sharing our experiences in the space. Over to you, Chris.
Elevator pitch.
So yeah, thanks Vinay, and hey everyone, I'm Freddie. I'm the founder of Patch. We're building co-working clubs for commuter towns. So we're landing on this concept of what we call work near home, which is first of all what it sounds like, which is a set of desks near to where you live, as Shalom was demonstrating, and as I did earlier when I dropped out. Infrastructure in our homes isn't always the best, and there's a dog running around and so on. And but actually work near home for us is something much bigger, which is sort of constellation of real world community building that you can do, or rather community building you can already enjoy, based on not having to commute into the city. Or to put it another way, offices are empty on the weekends, but if your kind of office-like environment is on your high street, then all of a sudden it's a destination. So you can go there to work on a Monday, you can go to yoga class on a Tuesday, you can go to your antenatal class on a Saturday, and really trying to create a place of cultural and civic exchange that, yes, uses the work in the desk sense format as its kind of pinpoint, but as I said, around that you build this constellation of community activities, and I think we're just going to see a huge shift of footfall back towards residential areas. Why would you live in the place that you call home near to all the people you live and all the things that you love, only to kind of abandon it 5 days a week? So that's what we do. Not a tech business, at least not in its current format. We are an operator. So these are our buildings, our sites, our brand. As you say, we incorporated last year, but actually the fundraise was only a few months back. So, we're super early stage as well. And then looking at opening our first site in October, November. So an enormous amount to learn, and interesting for me, having been in lots of early stage companies and prior to that in sort of a big company, management consulting. I guess I've always had like a team or a mission or some kind of external goal to work towards or act for. And I think it's so interesting for me now moving to this world of just being kind of, I guess, having to originate everything, the vision, the idea. I mean, it's super exciting, but then kind of like bringing that team on the journey and all the rest of it. And there's just so many new challenges like coming left, right, and center. Not least to mention, I've not operated a co-working space before. So yeah, that's me. That's kind of where we're at.
What's keeping you up at night, Freddie? What can we do for you in the next 13 minutes?
Well, first of all, I'd love you to present me 10 beautiful buildings that I can sign the lease on tomorrow. Would be great.
It's yours, done.
Yeah,
I can do you one better, and I can instead try and show you all of the email threads of me fighting with our landlords when we tried to rush into building acquisition at Rome, and then we ended up owing millions and millions, and we were going to be sued. You can have that instead, and then it'll make you feel better about your lack of
Hard pass. There's actually like a link almost to what Shalom was saying here in some way. Like he has this like hard regulatory kind of challenge, right? And we have this similarly hard kind of industry challenge, or let's say attitudinal challenge. Like the pace isn't there. Like, I want things done now at a really high quality. I'm pushing things through. You know what it's like, burning the candle at both ends to kind of dream big and sort of change the way that things are done. And like, that's the point about startups. They're not easy, right? You kind of see something that no one else sees, and chances are statistically you're probably wrong, but you have to believe that you're right, because if you are right, you could really change things for lots of people. And one thing I've observed is just how intransigent and stuck the property industry is. I guess so that's kind of what's keeping me up at night. I guess the way that I try to get around that, and like, again, interested to hear from like peers around the table here is, as operators, right, is like, I try to get around that by reminding myself that that's an opportunity. And there's like dark moments where someone just like casually just like doesn't respond to your email for 2 weeks because, whatever, it's, what's 2 weeks? It's a sort of a heart attack. But and I just keep trying to remind myself that, like, do you know what? Like, the more these barriers are put up, the higher they're going to be behind me, but also the bigger the opportunity to like unlock disruption, basically. If we can get inside this industry and really give it a proper shake, then hopefully we can set the new standard. But yeah, it's not always easy. So that's one. And then I think the other is just like broadly defined like learning journey of, it sounds a bit faffy, but just the like learning how to become a CEO. Like it's, I'm sort of over,
What are you doing to learn how to become a CEO? Like, what does that actually mean when you say that?
Not very much at the moment. Like, I think, I put a lot of thought, as you know, Daisy, into kind of personal development and training. And I think maybe overinvest in some ways in the expectation of my team of two. I really want them to understand that we have a culture that cares about people, but it's hard to deliver on that when there's so much going on. And so that keeps me awake. Like, I should always be doing more and doing better on that front. But the other thing I try to do is put these like very hard forcing functions around me. So I send quite a long and detailed monthly update to my investors, which I actually did way before I had investors, as a way of saying, all right, I kind of have a boss in a way. Like, and actually it's me. I set the agenda. I write the emails.
Wait, what does that part relate to? Is that the part of the learning how to be a CEO part, or is that?
Yes, sorry. Yeah. As in, it's a super broad topic, right? But I'm trying to force myself to be structured with my time. I think that's kind of a broad theme. It's like understanding how best to manage my time. And, if I have, as I do, like, if I have like a 90-minute or 1 hour one-on-one with my reports every other week, and then I invest some time thinking about it, like, are there other ways I could use my time more efficiently to actually figure out how to improve their learning or development? Or can I find other people, as I guess I have been doing, for them to speak to help them solve their problems? And so it's like a whole basket of things going on here. But I think probably resource allocation, specifically my own time, is probably the biggest thing that I'm learning.
Okay. Neeraj, do you want to tell us some ghost stories from you not learning those things before? And
what's interesting is, and Freddie, thanks for sharing all that. It's I just met you like half an hour ago, but you sound like an incredibly thoughtful and introspective leader. And so I think that's really great. I think like a lot of people don't actually take the time to think about all these things. And the fact that you do makes me feel like that's probably not, it's probably not the blind spot that you have, because you do sound like someone who cares a lot and is already thinking a lot about time allocation and is already reporting on yourself and reporting to your boss of nobody, but you're super disciplined there. And so I would say you're probably already crushing it on that axis. And I'm curious, like, on your worst days, I wonder what is the thing that you're not as thoughtful about, because usually blind spots are the things you don't think about. They're not the things that you do think about.
Or you don't want to think about, yeah.
If you don't feel like you know yet, I 1000% recommend doing an Ikigai and doing it with a coach who's a fan of those, because it's interesting how sure you feel like you are around sort of blind spots and not, and like strengths and weaknesses, but we actually rarely think holistically about just that as a subject for a protracted period of time, or also have somebody whose only responsibility in that context is to reflect what you're saying back at you, so you actually hear it twice and all of that. And I don't know anyone who's done it who hasn't come away with like at least a little bit more clarity on like, wow, this is what I have to look for in a co-founder, because that's often the context in which we recommend the coach that we work most closely with at Backed. But even aside from that, it's just, what am I really shit at is actually a very hard question to answer. And so if you have thoughts, it's great. But if you don't feel like you sure you have the full list, I think it's worth setting aside that time to do it, because then that's how you make sure that your senior hiring, which is kind of what you're doing now, everyone's senior because there's 10 of you, whatever, that someone is for sure covering for what you don't have.
Yeah, and one more quick thing is just that because I feel like you're so introspective already, I feel like maybe like thinking a lot, like super deeply and constantly about what you're not good at I would almost reverse it and just kind of like think a lot more about what you are good, because I bet you're sounds like you're very good, and focusing your energy there on being even better at being in attack mode on the things that you're great at. I feel like can sometimes be helpful for a business, and hire for the things you're not good at. Don't think about them. Obviously, think about them.
Yeah. Like definitely like a no, so that you can like not have to like have the question play on you. Like, what am I dropping is a debilitating question. If you are somebody who thinks the extent that you do and I do, like it's also, you can't stop it anyway. So you want to remove some of the things that would be a waste to use that whole engine on. And so once you are like, oh, this thing, oh, that's fine, Dave does that really well. Or this thing, actually, that's fine because this business doesn't really need that. And once you feel like you've knocked those off, which you can do in a sitting, and then that's it, you're good. And then you can focus, like my spikes more than outweigh, and that's something you feel like you can say with like a degree of confidence. But the ruminating on what you're shit at is definitely not a good call. I think either don't engage at all or engage so that you can like basically cross them off by either finding somebody else to compensate or.
It's not all that often that I reference my management consulting days, but there were some good things, and that was all really helpful because it reminds me of one of the things that I learned right at the end of that time, which is, and you know what, like, who knows how true this study is, right? Like we were sold, it was a product that they were saying, it was like, oh, this is, true because we've done X research, Y, whatever. But it certainly feels right. And it's kind of been something that is like a framework that I try and use myself. And it's definitely something that's not true. It's something that I talk to people I coach or manage, but hearing it from you guys is a reminder of making sure I do it for myself, which is, you can imagine that there's any like number of capabilities. And again, in the consulting world, they define 39 leadership traits. Right? Who knew that there were 39 specifically, or whatever the number is, right? But just pick a number. So you could be like really clear communicator. You could be like an inspirational visionary. You could just be like unbelievably operationally like on time every time. Like whatever these things are, you can kind of imagine what they are. And most people have this kind of I don't know if you've lost me.
No, what about you?
Oh, you're there, right? Sorry, I had a warning. Yeah, so most people have this like distribution of like really, really like spiky on 2, 3, 4, especially the good ones have like 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 5, but that's an exception. Let's say 2 or 3 like spikes, and then you kind of roll down the hill quite quickly and have this sort of long tail, and then you can imagine below the line of things that like are just like below that line is being you're actively bad at those things. And the lesson it gave was kind of picking up, Niraj, on what you're saying about, or both of you really, not kicking yourself while you're down. It's like, number one, focus on things you're exceptionally good at. And just like do those 2, 3 things, get really, really good at them, because that's why people will follow you, or will, that's why you will succeed, because you are differentiated in a number of ways. Never to mind that you can't differentiate, like you don't have the capacity to differentiate on the rest of them. And then the other thing to do on the downies is just to try and bring them up to some sort of acceptable level. Don't try and become really, really good at those. Hey, Niraj, basically I was saying, be good at, like, as you said, be good at the things you're good at. And then on the bad things, just monitor them. Make sure they're like amber, but never red. Yeah, and I think what most people do is they get this kind of long list of advice, it's a long tail of advice from lots of people who think they should be good at this, or good at that, good at the other, and they don't prioritize, and they end up trying to be good at everything. Yeah. So I think I'd say that's part of like a broader lesson that I'm trying to learn, or like constantly trying to get better at, which is effectively, I touched on it earlier, which is like resource allocation, my time, decision making. I know that a fast decision in our world is better than no decision. It's just really interesting. Sorry,
I'll let you finish off. I had a couple of thoughts I wanted to share with you before.
I'll finish it. It's really interesting applying those frameworks in property, right? Fast decision better than no decision. Yeah, but like if you sign the wrong property, that's your lease and like all of your funding for like the next 2 years. And then, if you kind of pick this furniture or that furniture and there's a lag in the delay time, there's like a 10-12 week delivery period, and like that's it. You've got like 10K of capital tied up in this thing that you just have to use. So it's I alluded earlier, but like I'm trying to bring the like startup agile mindset, Roberto, that you refer to, and just like smash into the property walls, but at the same time like managing my energy and just being, you know what, like sometimes you will come up against those walls. You kind of have to play that game. Yeah, I'm going on a tangent that I forgot about.
But that's also like, I think, a question of where are you taking in information when you're trying to apply that speed of thinking? Because it's not just speed, like decision making is how fast are you processing, but also what are you processing in order to get to that decision? And so you can optimize on the speed level. And I think Star's really good at that. But also I think sometimes what you don't see is optimizing on the informational content like side of things. If there are 5 people that you can regularly call, all of them essentially represent chunks of the experience that you don't have, and it's your speed plus their experience, that's as close to perfect fast decision making as is possible. And once you have that, then you can then you can sort of be confident in moving quickly, that the quality of the information you took in is so good, chances are your decision was fine. And if it wasn't, at least it was a decision quickly and you got to execute and iterate quickly.
Yeah, a couple of things. One of them is just to reiterate, I think the monthly communication update to your investors, I'm not sure if you share it with your team as well, but sharing that with your team or that kind of thing with your team is an amazing practice to have from the get-go, because you will build a culture which is akin to the culture you want by having that level of transparency with them and trust with them alongside your investors. So that communication, keep that going. The second thing was, I think Daisy mentioned this last time or the time before, which is finding remote EA or PA support to take on a lot of the admin work that you might be doing, you might have that already, but that makes a huge difference to your headspace when you don't have to be doing those repeated simple tasks just because you think you can't pay someone else to do it, but they're really affordable to do today. And Daisy can connect you to some that we
actually data if you want. Game changer.
The last thing was, sorry, I'll just give you 2 more quickly. The last thing was we should connect you to George Spencer from Rentify, from the BAT community, because he is also in the property space, a very smart guy and a good thinker. So we should, that might be help to you. And the last thing was with the strengths and weaknesses you were talking about. You've probably done a bunch of these already in your time, but definitely as a recap, like doing a kind of strengths test. Nick Katz, shout out to you. He shared this with me, one from Gallup called the Clifton Strengths. And it's a super robust one to basically say, these are the things I'm great at, so that you can double down on those things. Maybe your consulting days will give you another model, but like having that up front and center is somewhere where you can remind yourself of, hey, is this something I'm good at? Or is this something I'm not good at? And therefore, should I get someone else to do this? Because you'll forget that in the heat of the moment, you're like, I need to do everything, need to get moving, need to make this work. And you'll just go back into like hold everything mode. But if it's in front of you, you're like, wait, I'm shit at this. I shouldn't do this bit. Or wait, I am good at this. Like literally in front of your computer, then you're probably more likely to not default into doing everything and think about how you can get things off your plate.
Might be a long list for now.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
No, the thing that I wanted to mention is, well, I heard you are a sole founder. I am more familiar with working with the startups that they have like co-founders, but regardless of that, don't underestimate the value of the team, because I can imagine that you have like a team that is there for you, and just empower them to be better and to go closer to you and take care of those things, as you said, like focus on your strength, and these are things, delegate to them and give them the opportunity to shine on that in their strength, and you just focus in you're the CEO, focus in the vision, your strategy, and in the good things in the things that you're good. So leverage on your team. Don't think that you are alone on this, because I think the team, they feel that they are part of this, that they are creating something great. So you also need to encourage them to feel like the ownership of what you are building.
I think in some ways, like this is all really helpful stuff. I'm taking lots of notes. In some ways, refer to like that's the thing that it is easiest for me to believe and understand and to say. And I have always done or like aspired to do, I guess, in like the roles that I've had. I think it's, for those of us who've been founders, like it's probably easier for some people than it is for others. But like, again, I'm trying to be really, really, really proactive of letting go. And like one of the ways we do that is whenever anyone joins the company within a week or 2 weeks, they write a little piece that says why I joined PAC. And that's their opportunity to like make a stand, be confident and say like, yeah, these are things I care about. And they'll be like, the feedback sometimes like, well, it's a bit early. Like, I don't know what the answer is. And I was like, cool, nor do I. And that's, trying to empower people. And then that was a tip from, can't remember. I should remember. It was one of 2 people. I don't want to say the wrong one. But I think like my board members, and again, this is like a voluntary board observers, so it's part of the forcing function. I think was super helpful to me in the last meeting we had, where they were like, basically just telling me exactly that, Roberta, which is like delegate, like step away. And it was a really helpful reminder, because I probably was holding on to too much stuff, even though I would have told you like, that's not our culture, that's not what I want to do. But like, ultimately the culture is what I do. Or at least, again, this is sort of how I've always coached it to others, is like the culture is literally what the founder does. Because what the founder does is what the senior team do, what the senior team do, and so on and so on. So yeah, we're trying to be really intentional at the beginning, but it's amazing how much harder it is. Sorry, Daisy. It's amazing how much harder it is to practice sometimes. And I think all of these like very, sorry, Daisy. Just finish this thought. But all these like very, in some ways, could be seen as like patronizing like task, right? Like put a thing on your wall, like, come on, I'm not 15, right? I don't need to like write out what I'm good at, stick it in the wall for my homework, right? But actually, maybe I do. Maybe actually do really, really simple.
This is one of the things I think that frustrates me about the ways in which we aren't really taught about brains at all, which is bizarre, even though they control literally everything. Because once you understand that, like, the whole point of information, like, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm good at, like, rational information, is that it's supposed to interrupt your emotional brain, your lizard brain, which is just much faster. So the only way, like, so you attempting to just hold that and be like, I will remember, that doesn't make sense, because at that point, that signal will always be weaker than like the old heuristic of just do it, just do it, just do the work. But if you have something that can literally interrupt, it's why if you're not hungry and then you see food, you're like, oh, I was hungry all that time and I wasn't noticing. Or you're doing like an emotionally driven behavior and then you see a reminder to not do that. That's your opportunity to encounter. In the absence of that, it is so much harder to stop yourself. It's mostly actually futile. So I made huge, like, write the things that are rational pieces of information that you just don't, like, you can't otherwise carry in your brain. Put them somewhere, put a talisman somewhere that will force the thought or force the mechanism.
If it makes you feel any better, pilots have the same thing. They have a pre-flight checklist and has some really mundane shit on it, but it apparently
It's
stops.
amazing. Do you know there's this thing in Japan, like Japanese train drivers they point and say every sign as they're going, because it forces the confirmation that you've actually looked at it, rather than ending up falling on habitual behavior, because then you don't know if you've seen it right now or if you've seen it in the past. But if you point and say it, that's using your cortex, and so you know that you definitely saw it. So
did you read Atomic Habits recently, Daisy?
it's so good. I wish they were fucking giving me the like manual, the operator's manual at the beginning, instead of like faffing around for 28 years and then like reading all the neuroscience papers I could find online. It's just, anyway. So you're doing great. You're doing awesome.
Does anyone have closing statements, closing remarks, observations, anything they'd like to share? Otherwise, we can.
This was fun. This was really fun.
And I'm just really happy, Freddie. I think you're doing a great job. This is the business I've been so excited for just to exist since, I think, even before I was at Rome. And I think you're a really, really good steward for this vision. So you got this.
That's very kind. Thank you, Daisy. But I shout out to Shalom at Esker as well. Like, there's so many interesting elements to what he's doing. And one of the things that I thought was interesting that we didn't touch on was, like, in his deck, he specifically talks about the immigrant population in Ireland. And that gives me a lot of hope for so many reasons, for his business, but and we all know the stories, right? The heuristic here around like immigrant populations and so on. But like, there's something about that which is so much more, I don't know, I could be like drawing an insight that isn't there, right? But there's something, he's clearly targeting a user group that like can bring something fresh and new that can be, in some way, somehow different. So, I mean, that's not a fully formed thought, but I guess we didn't touch on it, but it was in his deck. But I was super impressed by what he's doing.
It feels like not just a commercial problem to serve for the sake of playing the game really well, but something like deeply human as well, which is a societal thing to solve or improve, which is always going to be more exciting as a human being to like see that and root for that. So yeah.
But within food specifically as well, right?
Yeah.
So 100%. Don't worry, he's getting a call from me. But I just feel like within food, like non-indigenous foods is like, that's just like such an interesting like hook, I guess. For he's gonna I think be able to like find a lot more variety and make the brand a lot more exciting as a result.
For sure. It's going to be huge for Nigerian food. Nigerians are so precious about owning fucking restaurants because our entire culture is like, that's a shameful thing to do, which questions. But anyway, there are so many people who are so talented and such an interesting cuisine. And I think this is the kind of vehicle that lets people soft shoe into it without feeling like they've turned their whole lives over to do that. Well,
Have I told you about chukus, Daisy?
Yeah,
I probably mentioned it more than once.
I keep hearing about it, and I'm gutted that I only came to my life after I left. But I'm going to try.
Of course, you're in Berlin.
It looks so good. I'm just so happy that
Very
there's
good.
a generation of Nigerians who are like, wait, our food is really good. Why don't we just make restaurants
Make it.
like every other culture? So I'm excited.
Alrighty.
This is so nice. Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to go have some wine. It's been real, though.
Thank
It's been a long
you
week.
very much for joining, Daisy, Freddie, Neeraj, Roberto, and Shalom. Till the next time.
Cheers.